Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Adila binti Abdul Aziz and my metric number is 3212660, and inshallah today I will present to all of you about my research title, which is Analysis of Islamic Leadership for Women and the Challenge at the Workplace. So as we know, women's leaderships in all its forms, level, positions, and involvement cannot be dismissed or be questioned. In fact, it gain respect and trust on global scale. Based on the Malaysian Department of Statistics 2020, in Malaysia, there were 15.9 million women in the population of 2020. So out of total 32.7 million people. So in the fourth quarter of 2020, the labor force participation rate was 55.3%. There were 5.89 million working women, or 38.3% of the total workforce. So since the country's independence, women have held positions of leadership in a variety of organizational structures and workforce levels. And according to the previous studies, the factors that cause this target have not yet been identified. Achieved is that gender diversity is not seen as a business approach that's strategic. In addition of structural factors, practice as and skewed societal thinking towards patriarchal thinking. There are also studies that show it creates glass ceiling for women to lead in certain rankings, even if they are already qualified and identified as capable. So based on the Sharifah Hayati 2017, she also stated that women's leadership is also linked to women's ability in balancing between her role between career and household, and also her title as wife and mothers. So there are no less views that relate to it with the religious factor, which is the law of women's working and being leaders. So it increasingly significant in the role that women play in community development. So in building and sustaining crucial networks and relationships in their communities, women leadership play a crucial role. When they take on leadership roles in the community, they must overcome social, economic, and cultural barriers, and frequently this is what drives them. Women's efforts have not received widespread recognition or explicit credit, despite the fact that their complete approach has influenced the development of communities. So in this research, researcher will explain in more detail about the position of women's leadership based on the Islamic perspective, including from the aspect of the concept of the women's leadership, female leaders in Islamic history, law and opinions about women's leading, and the challenge of women's leadership are facing. So next, let's move to the understanding of Islam and leadership. So leadership is not just about position, power, and influence. Leadership is in the previous scholarly researches is also related to the questions of cognitive, behavior, skill, capacities, and cultures. So in Islamic leadership is almost identical to conventional leadership, besides its religious, moral, and human roots. So according to the Rafiq Bigun 2012, for the past decade, different approaches to leadership have been proposed to improve leaders' effectiveness. So this diverse approach include transactional leadership, transformational leaderships, responsible leadership, servant leadership, and character-based model leadership. So in his conclusion for the character-centric model of leadership of Prophet Muhammad SAW, he states, "We all have character, but it needs to be developed and nurtured in the manner of Prophet Muhammad SAW did with himself and his followers. At the same time, that proponent of practical wisdom Aristotle would say that we also need to become virtuous realists. And the life of the Prophet Muhammad SAW is rich with diverse wisdom and virtues for the use of many respects, including leadership. So therefore, is it crucial in Islam to define a desirable, reliable, and efficient behaviors of women's leader? Islam's notion of leadership has often been conflicted with Muslim leaders' bad behaviors, especially in the modern era. So based to the Rafid Bikun, most importantly, Islamic leadership should exhibit the same good behaviors as those observed in leaders of organizations around the world during observations of their practice. As what have Prophet says about the leaders is, each of you is a leader and each of you will be held accountable for your leadership. Next, we move to the Muslim women's leaders. So, as we can see in the early period of Islam history, Muslim women enjoy the freedom of movement and participates in many spheres of social life. They cooperate with men both in military and civil life. The freedom enables women to develop their latent faculties, and the social institution and environment enable them to make full use of their potentialities. That is why women excel in the field of war, literature, oratory, public administration, music, theology, which is ilmu kalam, jurisprudence, fiqh, hadith studies, ilmu hadith, mythism, tasawwuf, poetry, and many more. So, as the early Muslim society gave women their fundamental rights to education and self-development, many women could leave their marks on the pages of history. Of the hundreds of such illustrious women, some of them are mentioned here. For example, Aisha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad SAW, was a lady of profound erudition. Many Sahaba, companions of the Prophet, and Tabi'in, which is direct follower of the Sahaba, used to come to her for learning Islamic law, theology, and hadith. And we also have Zainab, the daughter of the Hazrat Ali. She was a great Islamic scholar of theology. And we also have Fatima binti Abbas and Sihah Sayyidah, which is the two Islamic scholars used to come to the mosque regularly to deliver lectures on Islamic theology and many more. And not only that, we also can see through the women's leadership in the tradition of government Islam, there are several series of female leadership that we also had, which is the story of Ratu Hijau, Ratu Biru, Ungu, and Kuning in Patani, Sultan Nur Azam Sulu, Paduka Sri Sultan Zainuddin Kamal Shah binti Almarhum Raja Umar of Aceh Darussalam, and we also have Inas Embun series of Undang Luok in Malaysia. And also we have Datuk Puteri Siti Awan Setiawan, one of Jabal. So next we move to the women's leadership from the eyes of Islam. So from the Islamic classes, from the Islamic perspective, it is important because there are an epistemology of life, the Malay community, that affects their attitude towards leadership issue women. So based to the Andik Masna, she divides women leadership into the three domains, which are self, household, and society. So the three are not separate but interact with each other. So for a female leader, her characteristics are the same as male leaders, like Islam, puberty, intelligence, independent, knowledgeable, religious, authoritative, and the last one is not impaired by the sense, so that is it possible effecting the role of leadership. Okay, next, views of some eminent Islamic scholars. So, tough majority of Islamic scholars do not support the leadership of women or women as head of the state. There are some eminent Islamic scholars who support it. So now we would like to mention the view of some famous Islamic scholars in this context. So although there are scholars who prohibit women from going out to work, the majority of scholars, the rest of Islam, allow this action. Like Dr. Hassan Al-Trabi, he explained that the allegation banning women from going out to work is actually not based on Islamic Sharia, according to the custom and practice of community at that time. So one of example of working woman is we can see through Ashifa bin Al-Muawwiz, which is a Muslim woman, was first appointed as a government official during the reigns of Caliph Umar al-Khattab, and she served as a ruler of the Medina market at that time. She also responsible for ensuring the smoothness and elimination of fraud during execution business affair. So this is proof that women can also work at the same time be able to be involved in the administration of country. So next, according to the jurists of the past, women who are wives are allowed to leave the house without permission or husband in the event of an emergency or force. So this view is supported by Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, who allows the wife to leave the house without the husband permission in emergency situations such as save yourself from the fire, natural disaster, religious needs such as istifta, which is a requesting of fatwa, as well as the need to support subsistence. And not only that, this views is also in line with the arguments of Zainuddin al-Malbari in Hizbut Fath al-Mu'in, and as well as Kamal bin Humman from the Hanafi school. In the book of Fath al-Qadir, they also state that the wife is allowed out of home with the husband's permission or not in order to meet the demands of the community that cover affairs related to the fardu kifayah, such as being a midwife or bathing a corpse. So even in the situation certain such as there is no one to support her livelihood and dependent, so then the woman need to work to avoid the attitude of expecting society courtesy only. So in addition, most Islamic scholars allow women to leave the house to work with bound to certain conditions. The obligation of women to go out to work is linked to the general verse of the Quran, as Allah stated in the Surah An-Nisa verse 32. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ, which means for a man the part he works for, and for a woman the part she works for. So as we look, every human being, whether male or female, has a share of what is worked for according to their efforts and abilities. Islam strongly recommends is that people always try to carry out their respective responsibility as best as possible, and also try to improve the quality of life without having to be jealous of others people's advantage. So therefore, women also need to work on their own efforts in obtaining an abundance of grace and love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in addition to praying that every actions done accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, next, the views from the Yusuf al-Qardawi. She also state that there's no absolute Shara text regarding the prohibition in Islam against women going out to work. If the woman does not have a guardian or a husband, then the woman is required to go out to work to meet her needs and responsibility. So parallel to this view, Mustafa Ahmad Al-Zarqa also state that the necessity for women to go out to work in order to fulfill their own demands, religious world affair. So differences in nature and essential role between men and women causing a balance in society with complement each other. So although women are allowed to go out to work, her basic responsibility as a wife and mother remain a priority in addition to complying others' condition as well as manner as a Muslim while working. So the view of this group was further strengthened by the decision of the World Jurisprudence Council in the conference the 16th was held in Dubai, which allowed women to go out to work for reasons certain. So however, the job must be compatible with her habits and skill and parallel with the Sharia, in addition to preserving the obeying religious law. So this fatwa to state that the husband's duty to provide for his wife who work does not fail to comply Islam as long as there is no acts of nushuz by his wife. So it clearly shows here that the current phenomenon that shows more and more women are involved in the field of work is something that is required in Islam. So however, as a Muslim, we must be sensitive to the limits allowed by Islam when performing job duties, in addition to clearly understanding the priorities that they must implement towards the institution family. Okay, next we move to the challenge for women in leadership roles. So in past few decades, more women have entered the workplace because of advancements in their education's level and the equal rights which were previously not given to women. So rapid modernization process have a great influence on the employment opportunities given in today's modern world, as well as their professional development that might increase the number of women in the educational administration. Thus, gender issues have become an interesting topic to investigate. So this gender issue include many problems like pay equity, glass ceiling, perception about gender issues, sexual harassment, gender stereotype, gender impact on leadership, and many more. So, a part of this, I will briefly explain about the challenge they are facing among the women when they are playing the leadership role. Okay, the first challenge is in the aspect of individual and personal challenge, which is individual or self-challenge refer to women's personal characteristics that disfavor them in practicing leadership roles. So it also indicates the physical ability that limit women to execute their duties. Lack of confidence is also another personal issue that holds back women in pursuing leadership. Sometimes they exhibit psychological and intellectual incapacity to play their duties. So in the same way, their lack of ability to implement positional power, executing strategic leadership technique, adapting with the change, and working our push them backward. On the other hand, from the example, like what happened in Saudi, which is Saudi women are considered highly emotional and family bonded. Women, particularly in the traditional societies, are obligated to carry family responsibilities such as raising children, taking care of husband and other family members while doing the household chores. So those obligations seem to be barriers in their career development as well as academic progress. So leadership positions means a lot of responsibilities. In order to accomplish those duties, women need to have a proper skill, experience, or abilities to balance our family and job, as well as to the change in job environment and unfavorable organizational structure. So failing to do so, women encounter conflict as well as failure in their administration job. Okay, next challenge is gender-based stereotype. The term gender-based stereotype consider women are to be relationship-oriented, kind, warm, nurturing, and helpful. This perspective doesn't regard women having skill and abilities for pursuing leadership role. In many instances, a stereotype is a masculine domain. However, there is a research-supported notion that males are more competent than females in work. Men's negative perception towards women's representation and surveillance make women's work environment unfriendly. And for example, in the Saudi context, this myopic notion seems contravening in the workplace and depriving women of reaching the superior position even if they deserve. In this country, stereotyped gender roles negative views toward women leadership, lack of freedom are the common obstacle for women progress. So the patriarchal masculine aspect, authoritative approach of the management, bureaucratic organizational structure, unequal distribution of power and authority is associated with the Islamic belief and tribal traditions. So as a result, women's empowerment is backlash as well as suppressed. So according to the Al-Maki 2016, social attitudes like stereotypical gender roles, negative views towards women, and lack of freedom discourage and inhibit women to play their roles as leaders in the higher education. Okay, the third challenge they are facing by the women's leadership is work-life conflict. Work-life conflict occurs when family responsibilities contend with work responsibilities. Sometimes women ignore promotions in order to avoid preference with their duties to family. So for instance, like cases facing by Saudi women's challenge start from their personal life since their basic duties are managing home and child raising. So they find difficulties to get into job for family orientation as well as religious surveillance. So resistance comes from the family members when they dislike to see women working in the public sphere. So Saudi women face conflict due to the family religious observation. They have to meet the family and social obligation. So after the completion all the family responsibility, they can pursue their job. Okay, next challenge is biased organizational policies. So biased organizational policies means the absence of proper facilities, parental leave, flexible working hour, and biased performance review. Besides the presence of masculine norms and absence of female inclusive policies are the obstacle for women to ascend to the leadership position. So many organizations seek for masculine character with success and achievement including assertiveness, aggressiveness, and task-oriented leadership abilities, and this favor recruiting women. So for instance, like what happened in Saudi, which is Saudi women reportedly meet the bureaucratic infrastructure in the workplace. So evident from the Princess Noura University, they suggest that female educators experience problems in performing leadership roles in the public sphere. There meet bureaucratic research infrastructure in the workplace. So besides lack of coordination between the governmental departments, proper law for women's rights protection, and lack of policies and unfavorable social culture are the common resisting elements. So moreover, centralization of decision-making power, lack of authority also resist women pursuing their tasks. And reportedly, Saudi women face discrimination in getting promotion, professional training, and development. So there are many more challenges and barriers that women face in leadership. So this is a few that I state on the slide presentation today. So in facing the barriers and the challenge, we must know that leadership positions bring a lot of responsibilities to the leaders. In order to accomplish administrative duties, women need to have a proper skills, experience, abilities to balance a family and job, as well as the changing in job environment and unfavorable organizational structure. Women also encounter conflict while failing to accomplish their administrative duties. So for instance, if you look in Saudi, the culture as well as religious norm tend to see men as the household head and bread earner. So in this case, if women outperform men in terms of income generation, conflicts appear due to the unacceptance and intolerance by the family. So women leaders have to maintain different lifestyle in organizational arena, which it could be different than their family norms. So hence, changing lifestyle may create a contradiction too. So as the conclusion, Islam is not like other world religions in fighting for the fates of women. Women get various rights, including in the field of leadership. In connection with that, the views needs to be examined in considerations female leaderships based on local background. Divisions of duties based on biological aspect should be set aside instead. Gender aspect should be prioritized as long as it is within the Sharia corridor. So therefore, Islam is a religion that doesn't resist women working in the public sphere. Although Islam has given freedom to women to perform suitable jobs with family and states, but women need to take care of the principles of Sharia that have been established through mastery of broad knowledge in carrying out her responsibility in leadership. So in addition to being a pious wife and mothers, so the woman involved in leadership also needs to take care of self-respect, take care of the manners of a Muslim woman, and take care of the boundaries, the relationship between men and women in every action. And we also know that Islam does not preclude female followers from taking out leadership roles, as what one of the researcher, Badawi, 1995, he has concluded that there is no evidence in the Quran and Sunnah, the two primary sources of Islam, which support prohibitions of Muslim women leadership. According to the Lauren Ali, conservative notions of Iran and Saudi Arabia does not symbolize the entire Islamic world. And in many Muslim countries, we can see, for example, in Egypt and Jordan, women participate in the wide spectrum of professional and assume leadership roles as well. So that's all for my presentation today. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.